Good afternoon, everyone. As Noreen said, we're going to switch up the order a little bit today and start off with the Friends report. So I will ask Connie Fishman to present that report for us.
Thank you. Today I'm going to talk about slightly different things, since you've all heard about the gala and the volunteers and our other programs. Friends Development Committee now is expanding. Our development committee is not exactly a junior board, somewhere between a junior board and regular board. And they are now about 25 members, including about 25% of those who are actual Friends board members. We are segmenting the interests of the people who are on the board into sort of their personal passions. It actually has been very good for recruiting. And the groups that they are forming into are public and performing arts, sustainability and environmental stewardship and education, and sports and athletics. And the sports and athletics in particular, for those of you who run the marathon or the half marathon, we're now a charity partner of New York City Roadrunners. And so we have access to a very limited number of bibs every year. If you know people who are interested in fundraising for the park as part of their charity partnership for running in the marathons. We now have 5 new board members brought on so far this year and a 6th lined up for beginning in January of 2025. They are all park neighbors. Several came from the playground committee, 1 from the development committee, and 2 were referred by previous or current board members. And they have backgrounds in industries like tech and social media, finance, health, private equity, and real estate. We're also working closely with the trust right now on developing some new partnerships with prospective sponsors. One is High Rocks, which I had never heard of until they came to Hudson River Park this year, but they had a very big event at Pier 76 over the summer and are looking to do more things with the park. And so we're trying to figure out a strategy of incorporating Friends as a charity partner for whatever they do in the coming year. And we are working with 2 additional academic institutions on partnerships. I think last time I was here, I talked about what we were doing with Northeastern University. We've been invited by the Harvard Business School, Community Partners, New York City Alumni Group to have them do a consulting project for us. This came through a former Friends board member who is now the chair of the board of the Harvard Business School. And the other invitation we have, which we're trying to figure out if we have the bandwidth to do this coming year or we need to wait until the fall semester, is with the Yale School of Management. They have a social impact program and you work with interns there for an 18-month period on a project of your choosing. They're very, very strong in arts and culture and nonprofit institutions in the arts. And so that will probably be the direction that we go in. But we're in the process of making the timing decision on that. And that came to us through a pro bono fundraiser who we've worked with a couple of times, who is on the board of the Yale School of Management. And so she recommended us to them. We also just said goodbye to our student summer interns from Pace University, who worked with us this year on video production, communications, social media, photo archiving projects jointly with the trust and as part of our volunteer program team. And finally, it's 2 weeks to the gala. This has been a really difficult fundraising year, I think probably for many different reasons. We've spoken to some of our peers in the same, parks and Governor's Island kind of organizations, and they are telling the same story. So it's not just us. One of the theories that we are talking about is there are just too many of us now. We're all having fall galas. The companies people work for are sponsoring multiple things in a very condensed period of time. There's the 1 week that we have like 3 of us, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, back to back. And there's just too small a pool of people who are really focused on this area and companies who are asked to sponsor them. So we're going to be looking after this is done for some new ideas about, you know, the traditional gala and when we have it and how we do it. But I know a number of you are coming, and hopefully you can help us get to where our goal is, but also if you know people, companies that should be coming and probably aren't, just let us know. It's never too late. So.
And just to confirm, that's Thursday, the 10th.
That is Thursday, the 10th, Pier 62 for cocktails at 6 p.m. and Pier 60 Piers for dinner at 7:30. And then finally, before I leave, we have some goodies on the table here for the board, water bottles and Hudson River Park umbrellas, just in time for the rain to begin. So enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Connie.
Patrick gave a quorum now, so go from the beginning.
Great. So good afternoon again. With a quorum being present, I now call to order the September 26, 2024 meeting of the Hudson River Park Trust Board of Directors. Please note that the meeting is being shown live via Zoom and is also being recorded, and the video will be posted on the Trust website with a stenographer who will provide a transcript of the meeting. The directors have received the agenda materials in advance of this meeting and are free to ask questions or comment at any time on the action items submitted for approval today. Please note, however, questions or comments from the audience will not be entertained at this meeting. I note that the board memos and resolutions on today's agenda have been posted on the Trust website in the link entitled Board Meetings, Bylaws, and Other Materials under Board Agendas and Minutes, and thus are available to the public. There are 4 items on the consent agenda. 1, approval of minutes and ratification of the actions taken at the July 25th, 2024 meeting of the Hudson River Park Trust Board of Directors. 2, authorization to amend contract with EJ Electric Installation Company for Gansevoort Peninsula Electrical Construction. 3, ratification and approval of extension of contract terms for Pier 97 building construction contractors and amendment to contract with Interphase Electric Corporation for Pier 97 building electrical construction work. And 4, approval of amendments to 4 contracts with On-Call Legal Counsel. Unless anyone has any comments, I will now call for a motion to approve all of the 4 items on the consent agenda.
Motion.
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion is approved. There is no corporate action before the board today. Therefore, I would now like to ask Ms. Doyle to present the president's report.
Well, to start, I will say that the fact that we have no major corporate actions on the agenda is not an indication that we are not busy. We are, and I think the evidence, perhaps the best way to say that is all the people that you see moving through the park each and every day. It is insane now when you leave Pier 40 at night. Michael knows because he's there at that time of day for his children. The park is astonishingly busy these days. And I aspired to have the money and the tech plan at some point combined to do a proper count of everybody there, because we've tried this or pursued this before, and I think the affordable version of it is, the tech is not quite there yet, but it'll be there soon, I think, Christine, right?
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
Anyway, after several years of intense construction at multiple sites and the various contract approvals and amendments that coincide with construction, you can, for the most part, expect to see fewer of those for the next number of months. Our Gansevoort, Chelsea Waterside, and Science Playground projects are complete, and Pier 97 is nearly complete. There's work to be done as ever at Pier 40, but as you approved at the last meeting, Hudson Meridian, our new construction manager as builder, will be holding most of the construction contracts directly. And as you know, we're in the design phase for both the Estuarium and West 29th Street to 44th Streets, so we don't have construction contracts for those areas yet, but that won't be the case forever. We are, however, very focused on some capital maintenance though, and as you've heard at countless public meetings over the decades, Capital maintenance will eventually be our bread and butter and our biggest financial challenge. A great deal of that will be in-water work, keeping piles in good condition so that our successors don't inherit dozens of Pier 40s, for example. And on that note, on September 13th, the trust released a new RFP for construction management services for park-wide marine repair. The selected construction manager will oversee work related to repairing various sections of the bulkhead, piles, floating docks, and other marine areas based on recent engineering inspections. Proposals are due on October 11th, 2024, and the trust must still secure regulatory approvals for those repairs. At Pier 40, Hudson Meridian Construction Group began meeting with staff after your approval of their contract in July to begin planning the details, including phasing of projects for the next couple of years. Priorities, as you know, include continued sprinkler work and addressing the conditions that were identified in the mandatory parking garage inspection that we filed with DOB last year. Another Pier 40 condition that needs to be addressed is the loading dock roof that rims the Pier 40 courtyard fields. A number of years ago, HRPT bid out but did not advance demolition of this leaking, sagging structure due to the high demolition costs and our belief that there was likely a more efficient way to address this structure. Instead, we've done certain preventative maintenance to address core safety issues, but staff does not believe that this small Band-Aid approach will work forever. The loading dock roof does not have a core structural function for the pier's current uses, but it's valuable in two respects. First, it provides weather protection for the hundreds of thousands of field users each year and is thus an amenity for them, particularly given the issues of climate change and the increasing temperatures, including those in proximity to our synthetic fields at Pier 40 courtyards. It can get pretty hot around there. Second, because vehicular guardrails required for the garage need to be replaced regardless, rebuilding the loading dock roof is a possible opportunity to simultaneously create a secure structure that the new guardrail can be mounted to without losing some of the income-generating parking spaces. Staff has been working with one of our on-call architects to look at cost-efficient options and preliminary estimates for this work, and we'll be back in touch with you. This will be something we discuss with you in more detail. The trust has also released an RFP for park-wide testing and inspection services on October 17th with proposals due on October 8th, 2024. We're also working to complete construction documents for necessary roof work at the miniature golf building and our boathouses, and to secure preliminary cost estimates for some restoration work recommended by our art consultant for several of our permanent sculptures. With regard to Pier 97, contractors are progressing well on the construction of the maintenance restroom building, even with the recent delays due to utility-related issues. And I appreciate your approving the extensions of the 4 building construction contracts on the consent agenda. We expect to have the building open to the public in the winter, and we'll continue with work with State Department of Transportation on the requirements related to securing approval for the federal transportation funding component. That's the bikeway improvements and the permanent esplanade between Pier 97 and Riverside Park South. In the meantime, even though most of Pier 97 has been open since December, the project deserves a celebration before the weather gets too frigid. And to that end, we are in the beginning process of trying to schedule an opening ceremony for the 1st and 3rd of October, hopefully. So we'll be in touch with that shortly. Meanwhile, Marvel is preparing to meet again with the public related to the design for the 29th to 46th Street area, and the next meeting to focus on the northern portion of that area specifically. Over the summer, the trust met with Circle Line and the City Department of Transportation to introduce the project and to start developing understandings of these existing uses and their operations as relates to design. We also recently met with the State Department of Transportation. Marvel is also currently gathering traffic data, topographic surveys, and conducting additional analyses of the area. And Sage and Coombe and EHDD continue to refine design concepts for the estuarium based on the presentation made to Community Board 1 and the feedback that we got there. The trust is also awaiting cost estimates based on the specific proposed design. Once the extent of the anticipated funding gap is known, I'll be sharing that with you, and we will discuss ideas for how do we fill that gap. I'll pause here for any questions so far.
Just a couple things. It sounds like we're gonna be voting to spend more money on Pier 40, given this roof repair that is gonna be happening soon?
The contract that you approved at the last
Covers
meeting
that
is
already?
for $25 million.
So that covers it.
We
and
would
more.
expect,
Yep.
but, you know, that allows a mix and match kind of.
Just noting for the record, continuously the hole in the bank account that is Pier 40. And then, separate from that, is the date public when Marvell's meeting with the community?
No, we have,
We haven't
we
figured
have
out when
not
that's gonna be. Okay.
done that yet. We'll make sure that our CB4 oriented directors are definitely aware of that date, and everyone else for that matter. Anyone else? Okay. As I've mentioned at previous meetings, the trust has attended numerous agency and community meetings held by the Battery Park City Authority related to its plans for the Northwest Battery Park City Resiliency Project. As we've previously discussed, the southernmost portion of Hudson River Park will be temporarily and permanently affected if that project proceeds, both in the estuarine sanctuary and on land. Battery Park City Authority released its draft environmental impact statement on August 28th, and the trust staff have been reviewing the hefty document, focusing on impacts related to reaches 1 and 2, the areas adjacent to Hudson River Park, as defined in the DEIS. We're pleased to report that much of our input from earlier discussions with Battery Park City are reflected in the DEIS. As you know, the preferred alternative now locates the flood walls on the eastern side of Route 9A rather than along the bikeway as originally planned. And in addition, the preferred alternative crosses Route 9A at approximately Harrison Street rather than further north as originally planned. Again, reducing the extent of Hudson River Park direct impact from their construction and operations. Battery Park City has also acknowledged in the DEIS that it will need to work with us to seek both a construction permit and a permanent easement from the trust and also from the state. And it's committed to work with the trust on coordinating designs and planning for the area where the two parks will meet. The DEIS does identify certain significant adverse impacts that are not mitigated, so unmitigated significant adverse impacts, specifically to bicycle riders and pedestrians during the construction. A below-grade 4-foot wide diameter water main will need to be constructed beneath Hudson River Park and our southernmost lawn, generally that's down there, in order to connect to an existing CSO, combined sewer overflow. Aside from ripping up the lawn temporarily and removing some trees, this new infrastructure may result in more stormwater entering into the estuarine sanctuary in certain conditions at the corner where the two parks meet. This issue was raised by our advisory council, and it's a good question to pursue. Our advisory council has asked for clarification about this point, among others. The proposed action also encroaches into the estuarine sanctuary, which may reduce the extent of boating that can occur in this area in the long term, as well as increasing the extent of platform coverage in the sanctuary. On the positive side, the expansion is an opportunity to improve the connections for pedestrians moving between two adjacent public open spaces. The trust staff attended the DEIS public hearing on September 18th to listen to public comments, and we intend to submit formal comments prior to the response deadline. We will share with the directors the comment letter once it's prepared. We have separately reminded both Battery Park City Authority and the New York State Office of General Services that we will need sufficient time to discuss and agree on the financial terms for the proposed easement needed by Battery Park City Authority for the permanent infrastructure in Hudson River Park. We'll also need sufficient time to negotiate the construction permit that Battery Park City will need to work in the park. Such permit will need to consider long-term maintenance requirements for their infrastructure, the historic bulkhead, any loss of income from in-water operations, and the reduction in park and sanctuary area. The Battery Park City Authority expects to begin construction in late 2025, and in preparing the construction permit, the trust intends to include sufficient mitigation to, as best as we can, protect the park and park patrons. Pause there. Any questions?
Is the underlying assumption or understanding it still has to be negotiated, that the Battery Park Authority would look to make the Hudson River Park Trust whole or neutral in terms of financial impact or operational impact? You can't really avoid, there will be disruptions, but is the idea that there is a responsibility to try to make us whole?
They certainly, I mean, I think there are several layers of answers to that, right? So one is, and they're specifically committed to working with us on design that the trust embraces with respect to the physical restoration of the park area and the park that we feel like is still our park. So that is a piece of that answer. They certainly know from us, and I'm looking at Christine here, they know that we would expect and have for previous also important public infrastructure projects, most recently the Gateway project, believed and secured funding as specifically relates to Hudson River Park, separate from the obvious additional benefits of things like the Gateway project. So I think they are understanding that we will be seeking financial compensation, frankly, as well. We have not started negotiations for what that means yet. So whether we are, in the end aligned on what that means, given public benefit all around, TBD.
It was also added is underlying state property. So it's basically state property. So that's the
Right.
nuance there.
And which agency?
Office of General Services on behalf of DEC and state parks would likely
Oh,
issue the
it's-
easement. Yeah. It's state land, so OGS has the authority to issue easements for state property.
And a piece of this is beyond the trust control. We, as you may remember, allowed them to submit an application that is an incursion into Hudson River Park property within the sanctuary and over the sanctuary, and then where it meets our southern edge. The extent of that is approved by regulatory agencies is beyond our control. So whether that full extent of it is approved or not, we'll see. So how many feet it is, we don't know yet. Yeah, no, for sure.
But we've cooperated so far.
Yes, yeah. It is a 90-degree turn right now, and it's not a generous pedestrian movement. If it's done the right way, I think it is a real plus for people that don't care whose park they're in. Just. So.
I don't even know, right?
Yeah.
Don't even know.
Right, so that's our philosophy, but the below ground infrastructure will come with limitations on what we can do. We've had our own negotiations with New York City Department of Environmental Protection, DEP, has very conservative standards for where you can replant a tree. And there are some nice trees in that area and so forth, so I think that is a concern. And I'll also flag that at the very southernmost end of our property is a commemorative plaque that was installed by New York City, by the mayor's office, to commemorate the Americans who were killed in the terrorism attack. And that's an issue that we have flagged for the Battery Park City Authority, but it is obviously important to design and do work in that area very sensitively. Okay. I'll move to public safety now. As I previously reported, there was a fire in the 26th Street maintenance building on Saturday, August 31st. Fire department responded quickly. Unfortunately, the concrete building was not significantly damaged. However, we do need to fix the door, roof, and ceiling, and have provided a notice of claim to the trust property insurance carrier. We have some reason to believe that the fire was set by an individual lighting fire to the plantings outside the building. It's not a formal opinion at this point. We are grateful to staff of the Manhattan Community Boathouse for quickly calling in the fire into 911. And as you'll see from the after photos here, our staff did a fantastic job in the facilities and maintenance department, inventorying the assets and the damage and doing a huge amount of cleanup. I thank Rob Rodriguez for spearheading all of that and also for being there immediately after the fire, and he did a great job and his team did a great job. I'm also very relieved to report that a perpetrator was arrested in connection with the September 16th 12:30 a.m. assault of a female park patron sitting on the park bench near the LGBT memorial. Fortunately, the victim was able to resist the attack and quickly escape. The perpetrator forcibly removed the victim's cell phone and fled the park east across West Street at Bethune Street. The victim was taken to a local hospital in stable condition, and the Manhattan Special Victims Unit began investigating the crime. They determined that there had been another assault nearby inland, not in Hudson River Park. They made an arrest, and we provided camera footage that was very helpful, as we understand it, to the police. And we were also, because of our camera footage, the NYPD divers were in the water, and miraculously they found the cell phone.
Wow.
They know that it works, but they didn't find it,
Wow.
which is pretty amazing. Yeah.
Oh, for fingerprint.
Oh, I thought it was to get her.
Fingerprints did not wash off?
I don't know
Oh.
if they did, but they oil, they're not supposed to.
Note to self.
Things we know.
That's what I was told.
Sure.
So despite these obviously serious incidents, overall crime in Hudson River Park is down across the board, including petty thefts, fights and assaults, and graffiti. With that said, and as is true across many other public open spaces in New York City, we have also experienced an increase in disorderly or emotionally disturbed people in the park, and PEP has been called into action for support. One such incident occurred on August 27th when an emotionally disturbed person sleeping in the park on Little Island's gangway after park closing hours assaulted two PEP officers that approached him very gently. I'm basically just speaking to him at quite a distance. Both officers were injured, fortunately not seriously. The perpetrator fled the park but was apprehended by NYPD after assaulting an NYPD officer outside of the park a few days later. And another incident occurred on September 11th when an emotionally disturbed person harassed a member of our horticulture staff, chasing him, throwing things at him as he cut the grass at the Pier 62 lawn bowl. This is the kind of thing that actually does happen with a fair amount of regularity. Looking at Leslie, she can confirm that this is life in parks. PEP took the person in that case into custody and referred him for psychiatric evaluation through NYPD. There were also 4 chain/bag snatches in August, 2 on the bikeway, 1 on the Esplanade of Pier 84 immediately beside the bikeway, and 1 at Circle Line Garage. In 3 of the incidents, perpetrators traveled on bicycles or motorized scooters, snatching necklaces of bags as they drove by. We have assisted the 6th, 10th, and Manhattan North precincts with these investigations and provided our video footage when we can.
The video footage, do we own those cameras or do we just give them a place to perch?
We do own most of the cameras in the park, not all of them. Some of our tenants and others own cameras too, and those may also be used. The specific camera program that we use is the one that links into the NYPD system as well. Rob, is there anything that you want to add to that?
No, PD knows that we have a camera system, and even though they have access to it, it's easier for them to come to us in most cases, and so we do what we can to provide whatever we can. So sometimes they're just sitting at our desks looking through the footage, and then carving out what they need, and we'll supply it. So.
And we can consider this separately if that's easier to do, but I'm curious if at some point we have, or we should, reevaluate our cameras and how many we have and placements, et cetera, given how obviously essential they've become to safety, but also finding perpetrators.
Yeah, that's
And
something that we probably should talk more with you about. We do that on a rolling basis, including looking at camera angles pretty much every time there's been an incident to see whether we think a change at that particular spot would be beneficial or not. So there is quite a lot of work that Rob and his team and our management systems head, Owen Davies, do to be assessing and trying to make sure that we are covering things as best we can, while also recognizing we're not ever going to capture every inch of the very large park that we have.
We will relocate cameras on occasion based on those kinds of observations. And in some cases, our horticulture team has to trim some trees and, to get better lighting in a certain area. So the camera is working at, it's optimal. And so, and we're adding, where we need to. Recently, we integrated the parking garages cameras into our camera system, so we have better functionality over their camera system. We made some arrangements at Pier 40, so we expanded the camera system there, and obviously, since we took over their cameras, it gives a little more eyes everywhere.
Thank you.
They are proving to be a very important tool for us, though. I mean, for this kind of thing, but also frankly, as a management tool, the day of the fire, I'm sure Rob was, in fact, we looked at cameras, and the reason we think we know what happened is because we saw some camera footage.
We lost that camera too. in the fire.
Right.
So we got everything up until
Footage.
it was all flames.
Now,
Noreen, can I ask a separate question? Where do things stand with, whether electric scooters are permitted on the bikeway or not? Certainly,
they're not
public-
permitted.
Okay. And so there's just no enforcement really happening?
It's the State Department of Transportation bikeway. It is not safe to have a pursuit on the bikeway. It is not possible to intercept all of them. There are details that we do sometimes with NYPD or with PEP to try to stop people within bands, but they go fast. The State Department of Transportation has been retaining a consultant, in part based on feedback from the advisory council, from all the community boards, from elected officials.
You're
stealing
stealing all my
everything. Sorry, you
report.
can
Keep
say it
going,
better
keep
after. But to look at suggestions that various people have made about possibly expanding the bikeway into the highway. If the highway speed limit is 30 miles an hour and e-bikes go faster than that, are they on the right spot when they're on the bikeway? But then there are all kinds of policy questions here, but effectively enforcement is very challenging. There's no speed limit officially, but frankly, because it's so narrow, so crowded, you cannot pursue people safely on the bikeway.
I've seen, they used to have checkpoints. I wonder why they don't have some more checkpoints.
They do sometimes, but it takes two sets of people because otherwise someone will just
Yeah.
leave.
I think one of the things we've heard from Chris McGann, particularly with liquid precincts, and now that these e-bikes have been legalized citywide, like it is legal up until the point that you have crossed a crosswalk, have stepped onto the bikeway. It is legal all the way from on either side of the street. It is legal for however long until 59th Street. And then if you turn off, it is legal again. And so the NYPD's emphasis on policing whether or not there are e-bikes that are illegal on a specific segment of a bikeway and a bike path is there, but not as necessarily as focused.
We're the outlier. They're allowed in city parks at this point.
I'm just saying, there's so many close calls. I mean, every day, like a really dicey close call. I
Yeah.
see it every day. So it's kind of, it's not our park, but it's how you get into our park.
Yeah.
So it's just one of these weird things.
We were the alarm system, I think, for everybody.
And
And it's not particularly popular amongst many that we are the outlier in the kind of open space realm.
I also think that the city bike, white bikes are also very fast.
I put that in the
They're-
category.
It's hard to get across with those going across town too.
Wait, so are city bike, e-bikes legal,
Yes.
permitted or not permitted?
They're pedal assist.
Assist.
Yeah, but they're fast.
Pedal assist, and there is one which has no
They
pedal.
only have, right, they have a regular bike
Right.
and then they have a pedal assist, which is not, my understanding is not in the category of the bikes that we all don't like
But
on,
they're still going fast.
yes.
Oh, got it.
This is a good, I thought the park did not permit e-bikes, the city bike e-bike. I know it's pedal system, when you stop pedaling, it stop moving, but I thought that was not permitted in the park.
This park.
It's not in the park, on the bikeway is the question. On the DOT bikeway,
Right,
not in the
on
park,
the bikeway.
which I always
Right.
clarify, it's not.
Nothing's permitted.
The scheme, the legislation that prevents e-bikes on this segment of the bikeway was enacted prior to
Yeah.
the terminology and scheme for classifications of e-bikes. So they are not directly a one-to-one like piece. It will require interpretation by a court at some point. It's correct.
I thought they fell, because there are all those classes.
The classes were created after a prohibition of
Yes,
e-bikes
but-
on our bikeway were created.
But don't we prohibit all electric things?
That is essentially the way that we have messaged it.
Yeah.
But it's not ours, it's not our property, so we are not the ultimate interpreters of it.
between pedal assist.
That
and
great
e-bikes.
works for me, because I'm riding my, I'm riding my.
And I know
Don't blame you, Ola.
You're a resident expert and yeah.
There's class 1, 2, and 3 for the bikes. And at the end of the day, the ones you're talking about for pedal assist are usually the class 1, and they reach a speed of up to 20,
Yeah, but.
which is still dangerous on the bike.
But
I'm
on the
just
bikeway,
asking.
on the bikeway, my understanding is all electric are illegal,
Yeah.
whether they are pedal assist or not.
There are signs that say that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Going-
I'm just saying as a
Yeah.
category.
It says electric
As
bicycle.
a
all electric
general
bicycle,
category. Now,
equipment
how's-
rated
The
category
point that he was making
includes-
is enforcing it is complicated.
But I thought I read somewhere that like 70% or something of city bike rides now are these pedal assist bikes. So it's
Yeah.
like, that's the whole segment, and that's where people go when they take a city bike. They go, in fact, they can pick a city bike up right there. Anyway.
I don't mean to derail us. I just never know when to ask this.
Favorite subject of everybody.
This is a very frequent topic of conversation.
It's one of those weird things where we don't control, but it's so important.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a very good example, I think, of technology having changed faster than the transportation sector or the public transportation sector. So there's a few things that I think we can all think of where technology has made certain things possible that were not contemplated for our sidewalks and roads and other things like that. And because of the difficulty of changing laws and interpretation and enforcement and whatever, there's a misalignment. And I think that we are sort of the vanguard. We started seeing these issues before lots of people did, but other people are going to see them too as this grows, right? Okay. Well,
I'm gonna keep talking, I can keep talking about bikes again, Lori.
I was gonna say.
No more, we have another presentation.
I was kidding.
okay. So we got the fun part now. We've got our public program season, not quite wrap up, but close. When Pier 76 opened, Learn to Bike programs were identified by some community stakeholders as an opportunity for this large paved expanse. We reached out at the time to Bike New York subsequently and recently wrapped up another successful season of bike programming at Pier 76. From May through August, Bike New York engaged over 1,000 New Yorkers, both adults and children, helping them learn to ride bikes and enhance their biking skills. Recently, our seasonal bike programming concluded over Labor Day weekend with the New York City Unicycle Festival, thrilling about 1,500 attendees of all ages with one-wheeled excitement. This unique event combined circus magic with fitness and was a perfect culmination of our season-long bike programming. Of course, Pier 76 was also the host for many other events, including our 24th Blues Barbecue Festival on August 10th. We were fortunate once again to have incredible weather that day, and I'm proud to say that over 11,000 music fans attended. Highlights included performances from the Altered Five Band and Alexis P. Suter. This year, we brought back a second stage programmed by our partner, the Jazz Foundation of America. And then, of course, there's the food. Enthusiasts enjoyed favorites like Jace's Barbecue and Big Papa Smoke'em, along with newcomers such as La New Yorkina, offering fresh Mexican paletas. This year, we also introduced the Blues Dance Floor, where festival goers learned moves from Blues Dance New York. No one knew quite what blues dance was until we saw it in action. We also created the Blues Marketplace, which featured an array of hot sauces from local vendors for perfecting barbecue recipes. Anyone who's attended knows that Blues Barbecue is a really special event, attracting an audience that embodies New York City and its diversity in every way. Many of our guests have told us that they schedule their summers around it. As I noted, we've been doing this event for almost a quarter century, back from the era before we had a park full of trees and sports facilities and more. It was created as a way to start putting Hudson River Park on the map. And I've got a couple of pictures on the screen that are a reminder of what Hudson River Park and our summer programming looked like way back then. They've come a long way. More recently, we partnered with the New York Latin Food Festival on Pier 76. Over 45 vendors offered savory dishes, which patrons enjoyed while listening to lively music from across the Latin diaspora. About 15,000 people attended that two-day event. At the time of our last board meeting in late July, we had just kicked off our inaugural season of Broadway by the Boardwalk, a new Monday evening concert series at Clinton Cove, supported by Hudson River Park Friends. Despite the fact that some of the performances took place in that nasty July heat wave, This series was a smashing success, attracting close to 8,000 guests. Guests got to enjoy free performances from Broadway stars such as Eden Espinosa and Ramin Karimloo, and Tony Award winner Alex Newell also enjoyed for a surprise visit one evening, adding a special touch for the intimate setting. Aside from the obviously talented performers, one of the things that was special about this series was seeing Broadway fans and others discovering a whole new section of Hudson River Park. With the opening of Pier 97, we all think Clinton Cove is going to become a lot busier in the coming years. Other event series were also popular. As ever, Sunset Salsa attracted thousands, over 8,500 dancers, and our expanded partnership with Dance's Life welcomed 3,000 attendees and launched the Ladies of Hip Hop Festival on July 8th, showcasing female DJs, MCs, and visual artists. Jazz was also popular throughout the 6-week series at Pier 84, and we also worked with them to start programming at Pier 97, launching the Blues by the Boardwalk series, even while construction of Pier 97 continued. This year, we made a significant decision to extend our free programming season into fall, when the park is sometimes even busier than it is in the summer. Currently, we've got the much-loved Bollywood and Bhangra dance series on Pier 63, and we're organizing our first Festival of Lights, celebrating Diwali on Saturday, October 26th, also on Pier 63. And our annual post-Halloween composting adventure, Pumpkin Smash, promises to have even more squashing, smashing, and smushing fun in store for Pier 84 on Saturday, November 2nd. We're still confirming the date, but tentatively on October 5th from 12 to 4, we'll be partnering with the Chelsea Waterside Park Association for a community celebration with face painting, music, games, and other exciting activities. And at Pier 84, we're partnering with Friends of Pier 84 on Saturday, October 19th for the Honk Community Celebration with music, crafts, double dutch, and more. We'll share flyers when we have them. I'd like to thank and congratulate all the members of our public programs team. Kira Levy is here, who developed and executed our thoughtful and, of course, fun free programming season, with a special shout out to Kira and Andrew Ronan and Maggie Curtis for leading the team and our work. This year, we made some intentional decisions about the purpose of our programming. We dropped some events and added new ones to meet goals that included offering programs across our full 4 miles, as well as programs that would signal welcome to all of our communities. We took steps to introduce people to areas of the park that are less well-known, such as Clinton Cove, and to strengthen connections with cultural partners from our adjacent neighbors, Broadway, the Jazz Foundation, the Whitney Museum, through the West Side Fest, and other cultural partners, and numerous gyms and fitness programs that participated in our Healthy on Hudson season. We increased our participatory dance programming and have at least temporarily eliminated the beautiful dance festival, given its cost, but also because the setting created inherent limits on capacity and duration. We also leaned into what makes Hudson River Park special and unique, and that's the Hudson River. And on that note, our September meeting features our annual update on our progress toward meeting goals and objectives identified in our adopted estuarine sanctuary management plan. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Kelly Roble. Oh, just one more minute. Fun financial facts first. But before doing so, I'd like to acknowledge the good work of our River Project team, Kelly Roble, Tina Walsh, and all of their team members for the ever-expanding roster of research, science partnerships, educational programming for children and adults from across New York City that they execute in service of Hudson River Park and our estuarine sanctuary. This past weekend, Hudson River Park was invited to return to the Emerson Collective's Climate Science Fair that took place on the High Line. For this 3-day event, Emerson invites entrepreneurs and innovators who are working on solutions for climate-related challenges and making a difference. Hudson River Park was in the company of startups and others working on creating safer, long-lasting batteries, a company creating an alternative to plastic made of microbes that break down completely, and more. Working with Emerson, we made the decision to use some of our punny Crab Week content to spark curiosity about what lives in the Hudson River and why it matters. You'll hear more about their good work coming right up. I'll conclude by highlighting some information provided in your board packet. First, the Public Authorities Law, Section 2879, requires an annual review by the Board of Service contracts with terms in excess of 1 year. You've been provided with a list of all the trust's active procurement contracts with a 1-year term or longer. If there are any contracts you'd like to discuss, please let me know. You can always call me or Kim or Seconder or Christine if you need information about any of the trust contracts. Similarly, when the trust adopted the trust revenue guidelines in November 2019, staff committed to sharing a list of active revenue contracts, including leases and concession agreements with a term longer than 1 year on an annual basis with the audit committee. A list of such qualifying revenue contracts was sent to you yesterday, and again, let us know if you have questions. We've also emailed you the financials for the first 5 months of the fiscal year. Total revenues for this period were just under 19.5 million, and expenses, including capital maintenance and equipment expenditures net of reimbursements, were just under 12.5 million. Revenues are ahead of projections, affected somewhat by seasonal variations, while expenses are a bit under budget to date. Our mid-year is on September 30th, so at the next meeting, we will provide a mid-year report to the board. And now I'll turn it over to Christina.
Thank you, Noreen, and good afternoon, everyone. So again, I'm Carrie Roble, and with my colleague Tina Walsh, we will review some select projects from our estuarine sanctuary management plan over this last year. So as I've said in the past, the ESMP, it sets both specific goals and best practices to guide the trust and our partners in managing the park's 400-acre estuarine sanctuary. And collectively, we're working to advance goals under 3 management areas: environmental education, research and habitat enhancement, and public access and resource management. So I've emphasized that this is really a living document, and it's responsive to best practices, emerging science, and interests from our board and our technical advisory council. So we'll focus on this last year, noting some exciting successes and then projects that we're looking forward to in 2025. And we'll conclude with a time for questions as well. So, we'll start us off by talking about some projects related to public access and environmental education.
Thank you, Carrie. And hi, everyone. Increasing access to the sanctuary is one of the primary goals of the ESMP. So we're going to take a look at that first today. So the trust, as you know, continues to expand access to the sanctuary through park spaces we all know and love, pictured here like Gansevoort Peninsula, Pier 26 Science Playground, and Pier 97, which is soon to be complete. Something interesting about these sites that have opened is that not only do they help us achieve that public access goal, but they also really help across all 3 management areas. So take Gansevoort Peninsula, for example. Not only is it 5.5 acres of open space, it's also a site where we have educational programming that's been thoughtfully designed into the peninsula, and it's a site for research and restoration as part of that salt marsh. So it's always exciting, of course, when new spaces come online, but when all 3 management areas are incorporated and considered in park design, it really underscores the trust's overall commitment to all 3 of these management areas. So for us, it's exciting to see these projects come online and be a part of what we're thinking about. So looking next to water and safety elements of public access, the park's 4 Mile hosts a highly successful boating program, which the trust continues to invest in annually. That's through the engagement of many boating groups across those non-motorized boating areas. There's such a wide range of on-water activity that you can see pictured here. Everything from rowing and paddling to outrigger canoeing and stand-up paddle boarding. There really is, this huge boating program in Hudson River Park. And in fact, it's the largest cumulative boating program in the Northeastern United States, which puts tens of thousands of park visitors on the water each year. And with such a robust boating program, it's also key to prioritize safety in order to support water use within the sanctuary. So we've touched on many of the trust's regular commitments before to ensure that boaters remain safe. Things like life rings, rope ladders, safety signage, and on-water safety education. Those are all key commitments the trust has. Additionally, the trust hosts its annual water safety meeting, which is a space to really discuss a wide range of issues that come to boaters, that brings together both the non-motorized boaters and motorized boating tenants and permittees in the park. Because the trust is creating a wide range of touch points with this boating community, it really helps us consider better ways to support on-water engagement. So for example, following some grant funding from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, we've been working with our boating community to create safety signage, which will supplement existing in-park signage and incorporate messaging that particularly supports novice boaters, which is one community that the group that we're all interested in supporting. Beyond accessing the sanctuary, the public management area of the ESMP is also an emphasis on resource management and the responsible operation and maintenance of our park. So in the past few years, there's been a real increase on the market in terms of electric tools and equipment. So here you can see our trust horticulture team alongside with our operations team. They've been trialing a lot of equipment to replace old gas-powered aging equipment. So for example, this year, leaf blowers and many of our mowers have been replaced by electric models. Not only are these lighter, easier to operate, and a lot easier to move throughout the park, it's also worth noting these are high-use items in the park, and gas-powered ones are also a lot louder. So this is actually much nicer for staff operating them, and of course, people enjoying the park as well. One way that the trust continues to generally raise public awareness about the sanctuary is through media opportunities. And this has also been a really excellent year for press connected to the sanctuary, with news pieces that have focused on research, habitat enhancement, and education programming. So for example, NBC's Lauren Scala created a viral video of the wet lab in late 2023, which since has seen almost 1 million views, incredibly. Because of that success, she came back, did an in-depth feature on the wet lab, which both aired live on NBC and got featured on Taxi TV, which was really cool throughout the summer. Another recent viral video we've seen is from Pix11's John Freya. His video a couple weeks ago actually popped up on both Instagram and TikTok and already has almost 850,000 views and climbing every time we look at it. Additionally, last month, the picture on the left, you can see National Oyster Day. We celebrated it by talking to James Barron, who's done a few pieces on the trust over the years, by talking about Big the Oyster, which is an incredible oyster found underneath Pier 40 back in 2018. It's over 8.5 inches long, and the largest oyster found in New York Harbor in nearly a century. So that alone is a really remarkable milestone, and then a really great transition for us to be able to talk about the research and restoration work happening in the park. So when we see really great press opportunities like this, the impact is often most visible in our attendance numbers. So to give one example, the Taxi TV, it's been a really strong driver of visitors to the wet lab this summer. So on a Saturday, we've been averaging around 300 people to come through, which is really incredible. And it's almost double the number of people we were seeing about a year ago on a similar weekend. So a lot of people come and they say, we saw this on the Taxi and we want to learn. We had no idea. So we know they're coming there from that. Beyond general awareness, though, the primary audience or one of the primary audiences that we're working with are New York City school children. So this year, our River Project team have taught over 4,000 New York City students from all 5 boroughs of Manhattan. These programs, just want to point out, have a lot of intentional outreach behind them, particularly to Title I schools. Title I is a federal designation that notes their communities of lower income support. So with that, we automatically waive our program fees to Title I schools, but there's a lot of other groups that don't have that federal designation, but serve similar communities, such as summer camps and community centers. Therefore, we have a really generous fee waiver policy. If a group notes that they serve Title I communities or that they need financial support, we automatically waive program fees. And this results in about 76% of our programs awarding fee waivers each year, which is something really important for us to continue offering those free of charge. Public programs, on the other hand, are aiming to reach a really wide range of New Yorkers and use the 4 miles of the park as that setting for a science classroom and that aha moment. So each year our team is thinking about what are new ways and spaces that we can incorporate into our programming. So to give the Gansevoort example again, once Gansevoort Peninsula opened, we kicked off our shoreline strolls, which are an ecology-focused tour led by one of our staff to talk about the different environments along the perimeter of Gansevoort Peninsula, including the salt marsh, the pile field, and the tide pools. Additionally, we develop programs to meet the needs of our visitors. So when people come to the wet lab or they see us out in the park, one of the things we always hear, particularly from adults, is, I wish I learned this back in high school. I would be a marine biologist now. So this year we decided to make that possible, not the being a biologist part, but we hosted our first ever back to school series, which essentially were like adult field trips. So it was a night focused on oyster restoration or plankton microscopy, where people got the chance to really dig into that subject and attend a field lab with us. It was a hit. We plan to offer it again in the future. And one other new program we'll just highlight is that we're also really embracing that with new spaces. We're doing more pop-up programs. So it allows us to really meet audiences and people where they are and really follow kind of trends we're noticing, times of day things are busy. So in particular, the Pier 26 Science Playground, we've been doing a lot of pop-ups focused on sturgeon education because we want people to know that they're not whales. Whales. Yeah. Yes or no? Our River Project team also considers opportunities to bring partners together and increase impact during large-scale events. So you've heard us talk about this before, but our Submerged Marine Science Festival is one that really highlights partnerships. So this year we had over 50 groups join us as part of that event for the 2-day celebration of our sanctuary. And over the past 11 years, this event has also evolved a lot to really have a strong focus on students. So this year, following that, we moved Submerged to the spring for the first time. Previously, it had been a fall event. And that was really from feedback from New York City school teachers. Particularly, fall timing is difficult for a lot of schools to take a field trip, particularly those Title I groups that have less resources to do administrative work like scheduled field trips. So with that, we shifted to the spring. And in moving it forward, we saw not only more Title I schools, but also more schools outside of Manhattan that were able to plan that into their curriculum with more advance. So moving forward, Submerge is going to now kick off our outdoor programming season in the springtime as one of the park's signature events. Noreen also just mentioned this, but what's now becoming another one of our signature climate-focused events is that Emerson Collective Science Fair. Our presence at this year's event was really fun. It was rooted in Crab Week. If you're not sure what Crab Week is, it's and this is, I think, my only pun, so I will say that, an annual celebration on social media. Thank you for laughing, you're too generous. On social media and in the park of everything crustacean to put a spotlight to some of our lesser known creatures in the Hudson River. All right, and this is very fitting to talk about where we are right now. But we also wanted to just talk about the milestone of reaching a year right here in the Pier 57 Discovery Tank. As previously shared, this is a space that works so well for a wide range of our programs, from field trips to drop-in programs. In our first year, we wanted to share that there were an incredible 24,000 visitors to the Discovery Tank, which, wow. To build off this momentum, and also because we want people to see it and come back, one of the things our education team has been doing is creating monthly themes in Discovery Tank. So if you haven't had a chance, poke around, they're here till 8 p.m. Each month, we decorate our whiteboard walls with education activities connected to something we're doing research-wise or in the sanctuary. So this month, the theme is climate and human impact to really kind of dovetail well with that Emerson Climate Fair and other Climate Week events we have going on. So just lost my spot. Okay. So one other thing that's new this year that we're excited to share about is, Gansevoort really becoming this key site for education programs. When sites are designed with education in mind, it allows us to then come up with a field trip program to match. So this spring we launched Salt Marsh Science, which is a brand new field trip. It's been really popular this fall and summer for groups to book. And it's really focused on investigating coastal habitats. Something notable is that that program actually inspired our team to create a new educational resource called the Salt Marsh Build. So much of the science is happening below the water, so they thought of how to bring it above the water. And there's a really cool interactive model where students help build a salt marsh and then look at impacts of water and wave attenuation on our coast. So That's a resource we shared just last week with a group of educators that we organized called the Hudson Harbor Educator Working Group. It's groups from all across New York and New Jersey that do informal education, including a lot of our state and city park colleagues that come together and share resources and ideas. So a lot of folks that teach marsh and salt marsh education were really excited about that model and thinking about how to use it in their courses. All right, and so now getting to those internship opportunities, these are one of the key ways that we're inspiring stewardship of our local waterways. Each year, our River Project team welcomes interns from both high school and college age, as well as recent graduates to be a part of our team. This spring, as part of our ongoing CUNY partnership, we welcomed 2 CUNY interns this spring, one from BMCC and one from John Jay. Went really well. They had a project they were working on throughout their term. They were supporting Discovery Tank. They also participated at Submerge, which was wonderful. And it was such a great fit because one of the things we were hoping from that was that it would become something of a pipeline where we'd meet a student, they'd stay on with us and do a longer term. And that in fact happened. Our student Renee, who's an environmental justice major from John Jay, stayed on with us as an educator over the summer and is really wonderful. We're also excited to announce that we were recently awarded as a host site for the FAO Schwartz Fellowship. This is a 2-year fellowship program, pretty competitive selection process. So we're really excited that we were chosen for it. But their whole idea is that they're picking high impact sites for students to do a mix of social impact, direct service, and leadership opportunities. So we'll be recruiting that fellow starting in early 2025, and we'll share once that's up online. All right, and then one more internship program. How could I not talk about the Science Leadership Program? This is our hands-on research intensive. It's a 6-week paid program that supports students underrepresented in STEM. So during this program, high school students are mentored by CUNY City College students as they conduct research connected to plastic pollution and sanctuary wildlife, specifically gulls that sometimes ingest plastic when feeding in our waters. One of the main outcomes of this, you can see on the right, they present a poster at the Museum of Natural History in the Hall of Biodiversity upon that program completion. And these students also support ongoing park research and monitoring. So in order to better serve and be a part of that research, they actually started to come in an extra day in person this week so they could do more work hands-on in the field with our team. And we're, of course, really pleased to share that this program has been a success in terms of funding, and it's covered through the Pinkerton Foundation. So that's kind of a breeze through education and public access. I'm going to turn it back over to Carrie.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I just ask a quick question? First of all, this is beyond impressive. I mean, it's dizzying, the range of programs and activities, and it's actually quite, I'm shocked at how much I did not know. I have 2 basic questions. One is, when we refer to the sanctuary, I should know this. What are the bounds of the sanctuary within the park? Like, I'm familiar with what's at Gansevoort Peninsula, but what exactly is that permit? And then the second is, do we have how many K through 12 students do we serve a year through all these programs?
Sure. So the sanctuary is from north to south in the park. So for Battery
It's
Park
all of the
ends,
park.
from the bulkhead to the pier headline.
Water.
So 400
Water.
in-water acres, 400 in-water acres, yeah.
And then in terms of how many students, just in terms of field trips is the most trackable number. It's usually around 4,000 in total. That number can flux a little bit depending on the size of groups that attend us, and it's also increased since Submerge started reaching students as well. But of our 30 to 35,000 that's typical to serve, 4,000 are dedicated field trips. And then there's, of course, K through 12 within that other bucket. We just don't track it as closely with participants.
And does that number correlate with like funding opportunities in some way? The number of students we serve, the kids we serve, does that drive fundraising in some direct or indirect way?
So it correlates to a number of factors. So certainly some grants led us to increase programming in different spaces, like the wet lab, for example. The Emerson funding helped us to extend our field trip season in that space. But also that funding can support personnel. So our team has grown alongside our funding. As funding has become more reliable, we have seen that we have been able to keep a certain kind of cushion of grant funding. Our team has grown. When I started, we were 3 people, and we're now a team of 9 full-time staff.
And it's also, a lot of it's about balance too. So if people that teach a field trip program in the morning and then people that are leading a program in the evening often need to be different crews. So we're pretty thoughtful, like the folks that are out here today, they're on a later shift. They didn't teach this morning's field trips. Those were different educators. So we're also balancing those public facing hours with.
Always on, super, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your questions. So I'm going to quickly walk us through some of our habitat and research work and wrap up with a look ahead to 2025. So I mentioned last year that since 2021, Hudson River Park Trust has installed over 35 million oysters. Last year, that was 30% of New York City's whole oyster restoration effort, and this year it's still 25%. And the Tribeca and Gansevoort Peninsula projects are an exceptional example of partnership at play. So New York State DEC, their funding support helped us achieve the full vision of our Tribeca project, as well as our 5-year monitoring project. And we're wrapping up year 3 of that project, and we're really excited to share that we have been seeing SPAT, that's that next generation of oysters being recruited to these structures. And that's an important indicator of the reef health, and hopefully that these reefs can sustain themselves for the next decades to come. So in addition, this summer we launched our research program at Gansevoort Peninsula through the support of a NOAA grant through Congressional Community Project Funding Pot. And this is the first restoration project in New York City to pair innovative video and imaging sonar with some of those traditional sampling methods. So you can see that we have a number of partners who are helping us to achieve this project, but our partners from Chesapeake Bay, Matt Ogburn, some of the work that he's done down there has helped to show that integrating environmental DNA, this video work and sonar can really help to extend capacity and budgets to extend the timelines of these research programs. So we're interested to not only get comparable findings between Tribeca and Gansevoort, but see how these new methods can really help our region research these reefs for longer. And these are just 2 snippets of some of the underwater footage and the sonar imaging. So you can see the white outline on these oysters just shows new growth. You can see some of the reef associates or fishes that are using these reefs. And then the sonar.
Associates, is that a scientific term? I love this. Oh my gosh.
And then the imaging sonar, what's so exciting about it is it has a resolution of up to like 1 centimeter. So not only it's a video, we see the fish using the reef, but we also will be able to look at oyster density, percent coverage of the oysters, and these oysters growing over time.
You see, you planted, I'm sure that's the wrong term, but 35 million oysters?
35 million between the 2 projects since 2021.
And this is a question I probably never imagined I would ever ask, but what is the rate of oyster reproduction? So would you?
That's exactly what we're studying. Yes, I'll get into it with some work we're doing with a professor from Cornell. Oysters don't become reproductive until year 2. We actually study the condition of their gonads. We harvest oysters. We look at them in a lab. I know, too much detail maybe for you, but that is incredibly important to these oyster projects. Are they healthy enough where they're investing in the reproduction, that next generation? And so that is exactly where we are in New York City and what we're trying to figure out. And this year, we saw the biggest SPAT recruitment that we've seen since 2018.
The biggest
So
what?
SPAT, juvenile oyster recruitment. So that next generation of oysters, which is really exciting because that is the kind of the essence of, is this project going to be successful long term?
And I assume some of them are not reproducing until after election day.
Wait and see.
See how it goes.
Wait and see.
I love it. Priceless. So yeah. A key aspect of these habitat enhancement projects is building community engagement and stewardship opportunities. So this year we started our Blue Team Volunteer Program, and it's building off of the successes of Friends Green Team program, but it connects community to these river stewardship projects. So Gulp, our waste shark, help to extend our shoreline cleanups by collecting and removing marine debris that was once impossible to reach. And then our community reef balls and our oyster wraps, these are helping us to include park users in the Tribeca and Gansevoort projects. And the blue team made a big splash, so we're really excited next season to only help grow that program. Research partnerships are hugely important to making all of these projects possible. We've been proactively fostering collaborations with CUNY and other colleges and universities over the last few years. And in 2024, we worked with 20 different visiting scholars from 15 universities and colleges. And these partners really help to extend our research capacity, as well as just share their expertise to the park, to our regional partners. And as Tina mentioned, you know, the park has been this cherished classroom for years, but we're really excited that now we're becoming this resource for scientists, for students to conduct their research right here in the park's boundaries. And I think just the power of research that the park's really tapping into. Research, you know, can be a job training opportunity. Research can be a learning tool for scientists and students and park community. Research can be this hands-on experience that builds stewardship. It can be a decision-making driver. And then, of course, it can be this awesome storyteller once you get your audience hooked on nerdy stuff. So, just to dig in a little bit further on this, in 2023, through our partnership with CUNY University of New York, we launched a grant to support CUNY faculty and students to do research in the park on these emerging issues in our estuary. So we funded 2 projects in 2024, each $10K, and it brought Dr. Muth from Brooklyn College and Dr. Sanchenko and Dr. Raymond into the park doing research with their students. Just to share some more partnerships, I'm going to kind of breeze through them, but over the last year, we've expanded our scope of research and broadened this partnership. So we welcome Dr. Deshpande from NOAA with one of his Holling scholars, Kalani James, into the park. Dr. Grothus from Rutgers University was doing a Nekton study. And lastly, Dr. Allison Fitzgerald, she was actually looking at how other organisms settling on oyster structures may influence that oyster spat from settling. They might outcompete it. And then just another story to share. This year, it was really exciting to get a call from Dr. Emlyn Reciteris. She said, hey, I'm new to New York City. I'm now a professor at Barnard, and I've heard you're an awesome partner to work with. I'd love to bring my research here. So we're starting to also get people who are just proactively reaching out to us because we're easy to work with and we're helping to make their lives easier by collecting samples. So for her project, with our fish survey that's been going on for 30 years, we collected mud snails. And essentially she's looking at how a parasite on these mud snails is actually an indicator of ecosystem health because they couldn't survive without certain water quality conditions, et cetera. So just great to build new and old partners. And we're excited to keep sharing the learnings from this research. We host an annual science meeting with all of our partners to get feedback on this progress and look ahead to priority areas. And then just to conclude, as we look ahead to 2025, we have a few projects that we're especially eager to advance. So we received a second NOAA grant of $963,000, and this is going to help us to design another habitat enhancement projects slated for the area north of 14th Street. We haven't yet decided exactly where, but we'll begin our collaborative design process in the early part of 2025. Then with our partners at DEC and the Harbor Estuary Program, we've been leading meetings to think across our 3 management plans and to align shared priorities. And we all have these management plans, but to actually think together, how can we, 1, identify these really complex challenges that we're all facing, but 2, help to accelerate us reaching these goals that we all share. So we've been playing a big role in bringing these partners together to think strategically in that way. And then we've talked about the CUNY partnership, but we still need to institutionalize it. We've been increasing our funding each year with them, but how can we develop an agreement, an MOU, or whatever works within that huge institution so that it has legacy and legs to continue on? And then lastly, over the last year, we've advanced the estuarium design and we look forward to continuing that project in 2025. Also part of the exhibits and the water supply systems. And so right now we're getting a better understanding of estimates, and we hope that that can help us to close the remaining funding gap. And then I think that's it for me. So just to simply conclude, thank you for your time and your commitment and investment in this park sanctuary. And we're happy to take any questions if there's time. Hi, Christine.
So I have a question. I mean, this is just blowing my mind. The breadth, the depth, the numbers. With all the research that you are doing, is there something that is left behind as a notes, document, PowerPoint, TikTok, I mean, something that really captures, oh, this is what's happening. So people who are not here or in this room can capture this, the expense of what is being done.
Yeah. So our current research page on our website has each of our project areas that Hudson River Park leads. And then we also have a visiting scholar page where we post their reports. But we have a commitment to share all of our data that we collect is open source, and we write an in-house annual report on each of our projects. And that way, students can use it, scientists can use it, and often it's how we actually meet scientists, because they're like, oh, I see that you have this data, and can we do this? I have this project this way, building off of it. So it's been an amazing kind of conversation starter and partnership builder.
So that I should have gone to the page before asking the question.
Yeah, but
no, what I'm saying is that it's like more of a push out.
Doing that proactive outreach.
Right, a push out. Is that a podcast that kids could listen to in the class? Or or people knowing how much it is, because I mean, obviously, I didn't go to the page.
Actually, I have two ways that we publicly share. So one is our Ask a Scientist series. So when Carrie mentioned those Science Research Alliance partnerships, one of the requirements is that they both present at Submerge and they present at a trust events. They present at Ask a Scientist and share their research. So that's a lecture series where people come to Discovery Tank or the Wet Lab to learn more about
So we should have that on YouTube.
Yeah, we actually have that one on
Right?
YouTube. Yeah, and then the second one is our
So anyway,
science
I mean, you
stories.
get.
Yeah.
the
But
sense
yeah,
of-
there's a lot of ways to think about it.
But I will say that there actually is a ton that we put out there, but there is so much we do.
I know.
That unless there is this kind of meeting where people are willing to listen to people for a while,
Right.
they get a soundbite, because that's the way our world works.
Yeah.
So I would welcome, we all would, welcome conversation this winter, whatever, about other ways that we can get more people to not just take away, oh, we were at the science fair, or oh, we were here, but to get the bang of all of
Right,
it.
exactly.
So I welcome that as a conversation.
No, I absolutely, but it's amazing and it's challenging.
Yeah.
And I want to give a shout out particularly to Carrie and Tina and Stark, who was on our team. Our team does an amazing amount of media and press coverage about science on the Hudson River. Oysters obviously being like the headline, everyone's covering oysters. The New York Times checks on big every National Oyster Day. They call to their health, whether or not it's dead yet. We do a lot. So we have Carrie was working with The Gothamist. We've had a number of reporters who come to us now proactively as a source of technical and scientific information about the Hudson, about how the river's going. When there were tides, when there were CSO events, people call us now proactively to ask us about it, which is a really good way of educating beyond, particularly adults, beyond school and school environments and universities and things like that, to proactively reach a much broader audience. Science reporting is incredibly tricky. It's really hard to convince a reporter to spend the amount of time it takes to really understand an issue in order to report it out accurately. But this team in particular has done an amazing job with it. You may have seen Siddhartha to Taxi TV, right? Like about the wet lab, like that was, I mean, it was great science
That was
coverage
great.
that like otherwise I think is really hard to do.
You get used to my stuff.
What is that called?
Our PR team also pitches these to science reporters and otherwise, and the success frankly of the Taxi TV experience this year for two of our things. We're going to look at Taxi TV seriously as a way for us to do outreach about other Hudson River
Yeah.
Park things next year. It seems
Good.
good.
I
That's
can
beautiful.
speak to the efficacy of it. The meatpacking district, we've done 3 ads so far. We're gonna be doing another one, and like we get tremendous positive feedback. It also makes me happy that people are taking yellows and like, it's
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
it's great.
So I would just also note that the partnerships that you guys described, which thank you for the partnership that you have with DEC, is also really key to this. You know, the broad public interaction is really, really important, but also in the research world. And I think as you described, you have a reputation, right? You have the resource that's here, which is super important, but also the reputation as a group who are great to work with. So in that world, there's also a lot of information sharing that's happening that's really, really special. I wanted to ask about, you said that the wet lab numbers doubled. And so I just want to, that made me think about resources and how it was faring and if there's plans for accommodating, 2 times as many people.
Yeah, so Saturdays in particular, the numbers have really spiked. We've actually gotten to a space where we're adding an extra staff member on weekends during our afternoon hours, which have been the busiest. So really what comes down to is that we need more self-guided resources, things that people come in, maybe a staff member is finishing up a tour while that's happening. There's, maybe a guide that you're following along and learning. So we're starting to think of some of those more passive resources that can help manage during those peak moments, because we do sometimes have, especially with Liberty Cruises, actually, there's a lot more foot traffic on the South Walkway. We'll get a family coming off the cruise that wanders into the wet lab, sometimes a group of 10, 15 people all at once. So it's a lot more people, but it's, I think, a welcome problem to have in the wet lab, because we want people to find us, and historically it was more us trying to convince people to go down that walkway.
Yeah, that's great thinking on that. And then I also just really specific question, because we deal with this a lot too. So the transition over to, and this is maybe an operations question, the transition over to electric maintenance, is there like a broad plan for that that's incorporated into like a bigger sustainability plan for the park?
Yeah, I could try to answer that. So we have been purchasing very selectively certain maintenance type of equipment. Over time, we've been working on with friends and identifying grant opportunities there, and then queuing that up as best as we can. But we're also testing equipment too. I think that's important. We don't want to necessarily invest $100,000 into equipment that we don't know it's actually going to work exactly how we want it to. So for the last couple of years, I'd say at the moment, probably about 1/4 of our equipment, our landscaping equipment, is electric. But one of the things we're discovering are the different types of challenges, right? Like all the batteries that you need, and then you have to charge all these batteries, and the amount of space that it takes to charge all these batteries. And we have these very small buildings that are already fit out, and so we're working through how do you secure it all too, is the other thing. Things won't. So strategically, we are looking on how we can find funding for it, to continue to invest in it, and actually figuring out where the product lines. And there's plenty of vendors out there now, so we're looking at all. So.
Well, you have space in Pier 4.
We joke all the time. Plenty of space, and there never is enough space.
Charging is.
Do we have any electric generation in the park? I obviously, we have no wind and we assume have no current.
There is solar.
do we have any
panels-
solar?
There are solar panels on the neutral water side, bathroom. There will also be a substantial number of solar panels on top of the 307. Restroom and maintenance facility. I believe those are the only two spots that we can.
We've looked in the past, and just an example of technology may have answered that, but we once looked at solar on the roof of Pier. But then that means you lose parking spaces again, in order to have your bays, which obviously we needed. But the panel sizes are decreasing, and so, it's something may be possible eventually there.
And I assume the permitting and all to do either current or wind would be just too challenging.
Wind is very difficult in this corridor because of flight paths for birds. So that is almost, almost a non-starter, I would say, wind. And it's also surprisingly noisy, a lot of wind, so I think wind is
And
probably
ugly.
out. And then our tides are very tough for some of the in-water paths that people have pursued in the past. But we will always be looking at what might be an option, and we can trial things too.
Any other questions?
I just want to say this
Yep.
makes me realize we really did need an educational partner at Pier 26. Screw them. We're so much better off with you guys.
Well, I will say that we've matured a lot. I mean, Harry and Tina and their teams are obviously fantastic. Having some foundation money come in and other things and being able to grow the size of the team to let us serve more people, and so that they're not directly doing the research and all of the education themselves anymore, so that they're able to pursue the partnerships with other institutions and so forth, helps us keep growing in scale as well. So they're doing
Amazing.
amazing job.
That's what we wanted at the Estuario, and
Yeah.
it's kind of already happening. It is already happening, what we envisioned
For sure.
decades ago.
And if you look at a space like Discovery Tank is almost the 1.0 ground floor of
Right.
what Estuarium will need in terms of staffing. I think it's something for us to really think about in terms of serving the community, continuing to work with field trips. It takes a lot of hands and a lot of hours of educators to really support those spaces. And so this has been a huge learning opportunity for us to really know how do we adjust our schedules and programming to be open. This is open 17 hours a week, for example. But Lab is open 15 hours a week.
Right, so you can test it,
Mhm.
test the waters.
Exactly. Got it, Pam.
Yeah, you can really see the realization of that portion of the dream of the park in this presentation. So thank you for that.
Amazing.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
Tammy's regretting not going first.
So I'll now ask Tammy Meltzer to present the advisory council report.
Well, it's kind of, I am regretting a little bit, but it builds so perfectly on what I'm about to say. So there were two huge topics on the advisory council, and one of them stems out of the success of what we are and what we've just heard. When you take a look at all the programming, both educational, research, and events, there's a pulling back out of the park and the conversations that we have about transportation. There is a dearth of transportation, public mass transit, west of 8th. So we have a lot of signage around the park that says where to drop off on the other side of West Street. So we are, we got a letter, community boards 1, 2, 4, and the borough president from New York State Department of Transportation announcing, after the advocacy from all of us, including the trust and the advisory council, that they are starting a study. So we are really, really grateful and excited about that. I'll find exactly what it says, so give me 1 sec. It's a 2-year 9A mobility and safety improvement study, which will focus on multimodal transportation, future urban planning opportunities, as well as a resiliency component. It's incredibly important for the park because Battery Park City Authority will have taken care of resiliency till about around Pier 25. And everything else for the park needs to be looked at. 9A is the largest opportunity, and we don't want walls along the bike path. But we also decided that the biggest conversation is we'd like to be able to hook people by bus from Lower Manhattan to have an accessible way to get up through to enjoy the amazing parts of Hudson River Park Trust. There are no buses that you can get on from Lower Manhattan that can take you up here. It takes you all inland. It ignores the west side. And we are now fully really developed down here. So we need to have state DOT take a look at opportunities from Lower Manhattan all the way through to 59th Street. The only thing you see right now are private ferry boats. You know, the private tour boats bus people up. That's the only way that they get up here. So why is it only people who buy? We want to be able to support all the free programming and all the events and all the other vendors in our parks. So that is a letter that's going along. It'll be copied over to the trust asking for that in their study. We did
Tim,
take.
do we have a copy of the letter like we shared with everybody or no?
You haven't sent it yet.
So we haven't sent it yet because we had a draft resolution from CB2 and a draft from CB1 who are also working. So we're trying to coordinate as an advisory council to get everybody on the same page. It's going to be far more powerful to speak as long as we're all saying not the same thing, because we have to do what's exclusive for the advisory council, but in consideration. So it'll be out before the next meeting.
What are you doing with CB4? I hear you're talking with CB2 and.
CB4 was there, they're working on the conversation, but there are buses actually around for CB4 on the west side, but there are no buses south of 14th Street.
Right, and CB2 has just sent a resolution asking for that.
Yes.
We're going to support that.
Yeah, we started it in the advisory council actually, which was awesome in June or, we talked about it because it's a long way from the end of Pier 65 after July 4th fireworks to get back over to the subway to then hit Lower Manhattan. It's a short.
Yeah, and the frequency is absurd. I mean, the frequency is once every half hour, which doesn't work at all.
If you're lucky, if you're lucky. The second large topic was a letter that is going to the Battery Park City Authority that'll be copied to the trust board as well about the draft environmental impact statement from the Northwest Resiliency. The primary concerns that were raised are things that Noreen did comment about, but one of the things that we spoke about was definitely, and I'm sorry he left, was neutral costs to the trust. It shouldn't cost the trust anything if it's not a trust project, and the maintenance partner should be contributing no matter what. And the CSO is very disconcerting. And the question was with the captured rainwater, because of what it's capturing off the roads and other things and the amount of pollution that will be in that captured rainwater, because they're actually building a new facility to capture the water at the just past the park next to Stuyvesant. It'll be several stories of a building. And we are going to ask in the draft environmental feedback and our public comment that we'd like to see them connect to a CSO that goes directly out into the Hudson, not into the estuarium. That there are several CSOs down in Battery Park City, and is there a possibility that they can take a look somehow at doing that versus putting all of that water into the estuarium, or find a way to trap it, ship it to a water treatment plant and not have it go into the CSO at all. Those are the two main topics for that. Our safety committee suggested to the trust that the signs around the tennis courts be on the inside, not only on the outside, because the conversations of what the rules are would be great if it was a two-sided sign. I'm just gonna put that there. And we have more spots for community partners, not vendors in the park, but community partners on the advisory council. So I'm saying it here, in any of the research projects or in any of your outs and abouts and friends, and you find a group who's really fascinated by the park, we'd love to have their membership on the advisory council. And with that, because everything else has been said, stay tuned. We're looking to talk to, and CB4 is helping us, our partners across from Pier 76, coming in and presenting on their vision for what they're going to build on the other side and our vision for how they could be a better and robust partner. And with that, I close my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further business tonight? If not, I now request that the directors move into executive session.
You guys, is there a capacity?
Yeah.
You can say no. We can all say no.
I would just like to say, just a couple, like if people have a couple of minutes, I would really appreciate it for a few.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the executive session will not include any action items for approval by the directors. May I please have a motion to move into executive session and adjourn the public portion of today's meeting. Second. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? The motion is approved. Thank you. The public portion of this meeting is now adjourned. The trust will now stop the Zoom live recording and direct now to the executive session. Thank you.